if I go back to when my husband and I were running the business, I was pursuing a career. I wanted a certain level of income. I wasn't making the choice that, you know what, my children right now are my priority. And so that level of income is not important to me right now. I wanted them both. I wanted them to happen in synchronicity. I wanted them to be in balance. And it was never going to happen. And so my frustration level would grow. I was frustrated with myself, my husband, the company, the business. Nothing was ever just right because I was not looking at things properly. I was not placing the right amount of priority in the right places and making decisions, conscious decisions about where I wanted to spend my time and what was most important to me. They all could not be equally important.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Malitta Seamon. Malitta talks about the idea that when women feel drained at work and at home, they often blame themselves for taking on too much or not finding the correct balance. But what if the real reason women are running on empty is that they're constantly contorting themselves, shrinking, bending, over-accommodating, and overachieving to meet other people's expectations. Her own story of business success and burnout has informed her new book, Mindset Freedom: 7 Steps to Unlocking the Power of Life, Love, and Leadership. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So here she is. This is Malitta Seamon. Good morning, Malitta. It's so great to meet you, and I'm really happy you're going to be doing the podcast this morning.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Where are you, by the way? I forgot to ask you.
I'm in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C., by about 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. So you're East Coast and I'm West Coast.
Yes.
All right. Happy mid-morning to you.
Thank you. And good morning to you.
Yes, thank you. Well, we're going to be talking about something. Well, I've noticed, particularly with women, I think that this idea of trying to do it all, I guess you would call it, and what happens as a result of that, and what can people do, particularly. And I think let's focus on the women, I think, a little bit more. I think men have it too, but men are sort of not in the same realm because women have children and are sort of expected to raise them at home, or at least figure out a way to do that, in addition to being wives and if they're in the workplace, which is, sort of your story, how do you navigate all that and not feel that you're being completely dissipated from every direction?
Not sure that ever happens, but historically, like you said, I mean, women have been the caregivers, and that's a very special and unique role that we play in society. And of course, it's gotten better over the generations in terms of what's expected of us. But we still, I think, innately are fixers. We are the ones that want to make sure that everyone else is taken care of. I mean, it just happens sometimes organically. It's in our DNA. And so when we get up in the morning, we're not often thinking about ourselves. We're thinking about everyone else. And so as we have gained more power, let's say, in society and jobs, careers, things of that nature, basically we've compounded the stress and the pressure of making it all work. And so we now find ourselves, many of the women that I speak to, that I interact with, in dealing with the resentment behind it at this point, because it can be frustrating, it can be depleting, and we too want to enjoy life. And if I can just step back even further, just a bit, I think humanity as a whole, just we are energy robbers. I mean, we don't mean to go around taking each other's energy, but it helps us to feel safer, to feel better when we can have more people engage with the energy that we need or that we want to have. And so I think just naturally we do that as humans. And then women or people who have the female energy have an added burden because we have been indoctrinated, or the culture has expected us to play this caregiver role. So we end up giving a lot more of our energy away than we should.
I've noticed that in my own relationship. I mean, my wife has been, a wife, a mother, and worked. Luckily, it was her own sort of, not a corporate job, but her own business, which in some ways is more demanding. But there is a resentment there sometimes. And also, let's, for just a second, this might be selfishly, but think about the woman's partner and what they have to navigate too, or tolerate, or understand, all those things that happen when somebody is resentful of their time. It really is what it comes down to. I'm resentful that my time is taken away by all these different things. So it doesn't just affect the person who feels that way. It affects the people around them. This idea of, I don't know if you experienced this, because I know you went through this. Did you feel rushed a lot? Did you feel put upon? I remember my wife just saying, I'm always rushing. I'm rushing. Not so much now, but back when the kids were little and there was school and working, all these things that were going on. And I would say, well, don't do so much. I can't do that. So it's a conundrum.
I don't know that we always feel that we can afford to not do it. I absolutely experienced that. And I talk about that in the book, Mindset Freedom. My husband and I ran a company together. And so we built it together. I still carried the majority of the responsibility at home, as well as in building the company. And I felt that he had the luxury of taking courses and doing the more fun things in the business. And I, on the other hand, was always running behind the bus. I traveled a lot. Our sons were young. I was taking care of school, social activities for them. And so I indeed had resentment. And one of the things I talk about in the book was sometimes we sit in an imaginary jail and complain about the conditions when there's really no door. Sometimes we just need to get up and walk out and choose a different path. And I wasn't doing that. Instead, I wanted him to come sit in the jail with me and experience what I was experiencing, and give me the not empathy, but the sympathy that I wanted. That is what I was seeking, and I was never going to get that. And it wasn't until I decided to make different choices, as you said, to stop doing so much, to decide what works for me and what doesn't work for me. It wasn't until then that I began to find my own path to let go of the resentment.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are sort of finite. One of them is time. There's just a certain amount of time, and I don't think you can do multiple things at an excellent level, if you want to call it that, and do that. I just don't think there's time for it. You can't be let's say a part-time mother and do the same things that a full-time mother can do. You just can't do it. There isn't the time to do it. You can't be a full-time business person and a part-time business person. And I know they talk about the word balance, but I'm not even sure it's that and so much. I don't know what it is. Tell me what you discovered, because I know you got very burned out with what we were just talking about. And I think a lot of people go through this, men and women, but it's what was your solution?
So my solution actually came from the universe, in that I got knocked down in a way that I couldn't get back up the same way. I mean, life had just gotten out of control, and I was exhausted emotionally, physically, mentally. And hopefully others don't have to get to that point, but that is what happened to me. And so once that happened, I had to take a different look and look at myself. And again, as I said before, I wanted to look at Brad, my husband, and I wanted to put the blame and the onus on him and to put the responsibility on him. But we all make our own choices. And I couldn't be angry at him for his choices because he wasn't choosing to do what I chose to do. I made those choices. So, this is, and you mentioned the word balance. That's huge. There's no such thing to me. There's no such thing as balance. As you said, you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice of where your priorities will be, what's most important, where you're choosing it in any given season to give most of your time. And once you do that, it's important not to beat yourself up about what it is you're not giving your time to, because then you lose the joy in what you're doing. And it's a difficult transition sometimes to make, but it's a mindset. There's a mindset of, this is where I am. This is who Malitta is choosing to be right now in this season. These are my priorities. This is what matters. And I am going to have to be true to that if I choose to have peace.
Well, that is, to me, the important thing right there that you just said is making a choice and knowing that that's going to be, once you make that decision, that perception and that priority, and you do that, something else is going to have to go away, at least to the degree that maybe you were doing it. And that probably is the tug, that people get. It's like, well, I should, you take the word should, and well, I should also be doing this. And this idea of, and this is another thing I want to ask you about. There's this idea called multitasking. And I don't think that's real either. I think it's task switching. And I think women might be a little bit more attuned to doing that. But every time you switch a task, you're doing something to your mind and your body. And so if you're rapidly task switching or doing it frequently, that's going to pay. That's going to take pay. You're going to pay a price for that.
Absolutely. There's a sense, Bob, that we have to do it all and we have to do it even better. So I think for women, as we have proven our ability to lead, proven our ability to build multi-million dollar, billion-dollar enterprises, we still feel a need to prove that we can do the rest of it at the same time. And traditionally speaking, that has not been placed upon men in the same manner or to the same degree. And again, it's a mindset shift that I don't have to do it all to the same degree and in the same manner. I can release that. Now, I also had the choice. If I go back to when my husband and I were running the business, I was pursuing a career. I wanted a certain level of income. I wasn't making the choice that, my children right now are my priority. And so that level of income is not important to me right now. I wanted them both. I wanted them to happen in synchronicity. I wanted them to be in balance. And it was never going to happen. And so my frustration level would grow. I was frustrated with myself, my husband, the company, the business. Nothing was ever just right because I was not looking at things properly. I was not placing the right amount of priority in the right places and making decisions, conscious decisions about where I wanted to spend my time and what was most important to me. They all could not be equally important, as you said.
I just had this memory when you were just talking. I was thinking about my own family growing up, and my dad traveled a lot for business, and he did pretty well. And and he wasn't home a lot of weekends because of being out of town on travel and stuff. And I remember being envious of other kids whose dads were home and doing things with them. They didn't make as much money, a lot of these people. And I remember thinking, why do we need this much money for this lifestyle if I don't have, my dad around? Because that would have been more fun to me. That would have been more, meaningful. And later in life, I talked to him about it, which was, not an easy conversation. I'll say that.
And I asked him about it. And he said, and this was just a belief that he had, I don't know, was that he said, I didn't feel that I had anything else to give other than money and, a nice lifestyle, whatever. And I remember saying, well, I didn't care about that when I was a kid, and it was this, he felt bad about it. And he knew he had a belief system that was not accurate, but, the way he grew up fostered that belief system. And he wasn't able to get out of it until later in life when he kind of realized what actually was important. So I think there's something that people have to do, and you probably address this in the book, is that you have to figure out, what do you really want, and what's the most important thing, because you have, when you're born, you're given three things. Basically, you're given a body. Hopefully, it's in good shape. Most people's is when they're born. You're given an unknown amount of time, and you're given some kind of, let's just say, spirit, energy, emotional life, whatever that is. So the only question is, how do I take care of my body? How do I spend my time? And how do I nurture that other part of me that's sort of, you can't really quantify? And when you ask yourself those questions, you can hopefully, carve out some kind of a way of moving through the world where those things are, important. I mean, there's a lot of people, let's say I'll give you one example. They work their ass off and they eat like shit and they get sick.
Right.
And all of a sudden I got, all this money and I'm overweight and I have hypertension and diabetes and
Yeah.
I have brain fog and I'm tired and I'm then a little depressed because of all that. So what is what is the priority is what I sort of ask myself. And sometimes you can't do it just because of circumstances. I'm talking a lot because why? I don't know. You're the guest.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. First of all, my definition of success is wealth, health, and joy. So, if you don't have those three things, to me, you haven't quite hit the mark. When I tell the story in the book of how Brad and I worked the business for 20 years together. I'd lost my interest in the business 10 years prior and attempted to leave because I felt stretched, unfulfilled. It had drifted into something I had no interest in. And so, but I stayed. And I stayed because it was paying the money that I enjoyed. I felt it was the foundation and the security of my family.
Sure.
And I got to work with Brad every day. So fast forward 10 years after I've been giving Brad shit about the business for some time at this point, he walks in one day and tells me he's leaving. I'm stunned. I'm like, what do you mean you're leaving? He says, I'm leaving the business. Long story short, he's out within a month. He's left the business. I'm there, and I'm sitting there in a situation running a company we'd run together for 20 years. We have about 140, 150 employees, whatever the number was. And he ran the finance side. I ran operations. And here I sat with both. And I wallowed in that bob for a good year. I mean, I was in Brad's everything. It nearly tore our marriage apart. It ripped right through us. And that's the imaginary jail I described earlier, was I sat there out of choice. I never paused long enough to ask myself, what do I really want here? Do I really need this? Do I have to be here? But I chose to suffer because he had done something that I thought was offensive to me, that was wrong to me. He had done something that had hurt me. So I wallowed in the pain of it because that justified my feelings instead of getting up and doing something about it.
What an interesting way for him to approach it. This sort of, there was no discussion prior to that. You were completely blindsided by that. Obviously, he was not happy doing that part of the business or that business at all, and neither were you. It sounds like, but you weren't talking about it, is what I'm getting. Or you were talking about it lightly, so the other person wouldn't get offended. Maybe that's kind of what it is.
We had spoken about it. So he had been approached to about a job in the local government. It was like second in command. And we talked about it briefly, but It was out of the question. Based on where we were with the business at the time, we agreed that this was not doable. Somewhere between our discussion and the day he walked into my office, I guess he changed his mind and he didn't discuss it with me. He made the decision and he left.
Yeah, wow. That's really an intense thing. I guess he felt it's probably the same way you felt, like kind of backed up against the wall, and if I don't do this, I'm gonna explode. That's probably
That's
what it
right.
felt like. And so those kinds of those that feeling of desperation, like I'm drowning or I'm going to explode or I'm backed into a corner, and you kind of in survival mode, you just make a move, I guess.
It took me a long time to get to a place where I could accept that, where I could even hear it, because I was so angry,
Sure, of
and I
course.
was afraid. You know, afraid. I was angry. I was frustrated. So it took well over a year for me to begin to hear him. But really, the work, as I discovered, was within myself. Brad did what was necessary for Brad. And Malitta needed to do what was necessary for Malitta, but instead, I wanted him to come back. I wanted him to right the wrong. I wanted him to make everything okay. And if he had come back, it really would not have been okay.
Having this idealized version of what it's supposed to be,
Right.
um, and forcing that with people that that on some level they know that it's not the right thing. That's a really hard thing, when you, especially in a marriage where you have two people that have the joint sort of goals as a couple and a family, and then you have the individual goals, and when those or needs or desires, and when those sort of don't match, it's a problem. It can be a problem. But it sounds like for you guys, as terrible as that day was, I'm sure in the aftermath, it actually was the beginning of something that now works. So sometimes the worst day is actually the best day, but you don't know it till you're down the road.
It was actually the best gift he could have given me. What ended up happening was the discovery within myself as to why I was really there. And I was there for the wrong reasons. I was holding on to the business and the company and everything as it had been for the wrong reasons. I was not happy. It was not fulfilling. I didn't feel purposeful. And once I was able to face that and to release everything that had been and stop trying to reach this place of balance and perfection, I was set free.
How much of it do you think was the image of being this owner of a successful
Uh,
business and that?
let's say I can't quantify that. Let's say
you know
99% of it. I think what happened with us, and I think it happens a lot, you certainly start off with one intention. Our intention was to build a successful company, to have a life for our family, much like your father. We wanted to provide a certain lifestyle. And once we did that, we didn't stop. So it just continued to grow and grow and grow and grow into this large enterprise and to this reputation and, accolades and things of that nature that was hard to walk away from.
Yeah, it's very enticing and very addicting. And there's a lot of pluses there, particularly a really good income. And
And
then you
it's
think
ego
about,
driven,
of
very ego
course,
driven.
yeah, sure. Well, it's an interesting thing about when you talk about identity. Who you are and what you do sometimes are the same thing, and they're not. They're actually not the same thing. And it's like, well, what do you do? Oh, you know, I'm a musician, let's say.
Mhm.
So, and so if you're not playing music, you're not anything.
That's
If you're
right. That's
if
right.
you're not a successful musician, you're a loser. I mean, what does that even mean? So that I'm a business owner is it's a big ego driven thing, because, and especially when you have people depending on you for their employment, that's a whole other thing. I've never had that, but I just think that it's like an anchor.
Puts a lot of voices in your head, a lot of chatter that's not useful or beneficial. And I had to learn to shut it off, to listen to myself, my real self, because there's a lot of image management that comes into play. And I had to let that go and move away from what am I doing to who am I being. So this really became about me getting to know myself and being the highest version of myself that I could possibly be. I can do anything. I mean, I can go work in Walmart and be the greatest version of myself. But that was not my perspective at the time because, of course, that's not what we're taught. That's not what we're conditioned
Yeah,
to be.
sure.
So, but once I became comfortable basically with being nothing, because we ended up basically selling off most of the business and saying, hey, this is not what we want to do anymore. And once that happened, I had no identity. And that was scary for me.
Sure. Yeah.
It was, eventually it became very freeing, but it was a period of being unsure, almost, and to some degree, having shame that I let something go or I wasn't able to see something through. So these are things that we do to ourselves, the voices that are in our heads that are not helpful. They're not the ones that will take us to the next level. They're the ones that will keep us stuck and trapped into the past.
Well, it's kind of like a death, it's like, and so there's that process that people go through when, when a person dies, that's a whole other thing. But it's very similar in that this something that was so much a part of you goes away. There's this sort of no man's land of sadness and confusion and anger. All that stuff kind of
Yeah.
comes in, and I think you have to go through that. I don't think you can avoid it. And so there's that period of time you're in this sort of unknown, and it doesn't even feel good. Maybe just a part of it, there might be a little sort of tiny flame in there of relief that it's over. You hear that about people that are. I've read this quite a bit and I've heard people talk about it. They're criminals and they're so wrapped up in the criminal life. And then when they finally get caught, they have a sense of relief, even though they know they're going to go to jail or prison or whatever. And, I was so glad. I've heard people say, I was so glad it was over because they'd been chasing something that wasn't really working.
And that is so correct. I mean, it's exactly the way that I felt. Brad felt the same way. It was scary feeling, but it was exhilarating. It was like, oh, I'm so glad to be out of that. I mean, I literally would get sick on Sunday evening.
Like school.
Like school, exactly. I would just get like every Sunday at 6 o'clock, like clockwork. It was a heavy feeling. It was, I knew that I was not living the life that I should have been living, but I was willing to sit in my discomfort because it gave me a comfortable life.
So that transition period, I'm sure was very difficult. So how did you kind of work with yourself to get to where you are now? What were the things that you kind of drew on to? Because I'm sure people listening to this going, well, I'd like to do that too, but then what happens now? How do I do that? And what does that look like?
So it's really having the courage to be still. And nothing makes me more nervous than being still, not having something going on. And that's the very thing that I needed to do because I had to go back and start over. I had to get back to my true intention, the life that I really wanted to design for myself, and be patient enough to allow it to unfold. And, again, that's not a comfortable thing to go through. But if you're willing to do that, the answers come and you will follow your own path. You'll learn to block out the distractions, being truer to yourself, having confidence in yourself that things will unfold as you want them to. So that's how this book came about. I never would have written a book had I stayed in the company.
Let's say the title of the book again, because I know there's a There's the short first part of the title, and there's a bunch of other stuff afterwards.
It's Mindset Freedom: 7 Steps to Unlocking Your Power in Life, Love, and Leadership. And the reason that we have that long subtitle, is Brad and I both talk about in the book how we had to learn to merge living with love and leadership together, both in our marriage and in working together in business. And so the book actually is for anyone who is seeking to bring those things together, whether you are partners in business, partners in marriage, an individual just seeking to align better with other people. But it's learning how to get present and learning how to release things and how to observe life rather than participating on it. We talk about sometimes it's like if you're a person who hates roller coasters and you are able to watch yourself riding a roller coaster, screaming, waving your arms, and you know that the ride is going to end and that you're going to be fine. But still during the ride, you're still screaming and going crazy. But sometimes in life, that's what happens, and we have to step away from ourselves and watch ourselves to get to a place of calm, a place of peace, a place of rational thinking, so that we're not taking all of the ups and downs with what's happening. And so in the book, we talk about how to do that, how to step away from yourself, learn how to give advice to yourself as if you're not the one on the roller coaster to make better choices.
What are some of the things you did that you hadn't done? I think I was reading somewhere in your bio that you were doing breath work. Was that you?
That's correct. That's
Yeah.
correct.
I've done a little bit of that myself. And it was a very, very powerful thing to do.
It was one of the beautiful things I was able to gift myself when I sat down for a while. So I became a breathwork practitioner. I became a relationship coach. I began to study and do things that were closer to my heart, things that I wanted to do, not for any particular reason. I learned to not attach an outcome to my activity, but to follow my heart, my path, the things that spoke and resonated with me, and to allow life to unfold. And it sounds, sometimes when I'm talking to people, it sounds woo-woo. It sounds, I can't do that. That sounds great. But truly, it just starts with a decision. It starts with one choice at a time. And I decided to make those choices on my behalf, not on the shoulds, as you said before, not out of fear, not out of ego, not out of expectation, not because of what someone else would think of me, but because of what I would think of myself.
It's a great thing to do, but it's also frightening, I think, for a lot of people. It's like, well, what if it doesn't work out? And or just the idea of, well, that's not who I am. That's not what I do. That's not what somebody from my family would do. That's there are a lot of really strong ways that the mind will tell you can't do it or shouldn't do it, and that it's and the thing is, it's all unknown. Everything's improv. There's no
Exactly.
There's no real rules. But it is a little scary, to give something up that's unknown.
So when we allow too much outside in, but when some of us prioritize what the external expects, and I love your acronym, more than what our inner self needs or desires, then we miss the whole point of life. I'm here to live my life the way that I was created to live, right? There's only one me, there's only one of you. And if we continuously give that away, we never really get to experience the fullness of it. And it took a minute for me to really get comfortable with that, to release all of the expectations, all of the judgments, all of the opinions. What if it doesn't work? Well, you know what? If it doesn't work, the worst that can happen is I go back to who I was before.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. Did you get any kind of commentary from people? Like, I'm saying negative commentary for giving up what was there? Did people say things to you? Like, what are you doing? That seems really stupid. What are you nuts? I'm just thinking of all the things.
People said things to me. People said things about me. So it was really funny when we decided to downsize, sell off the business. I mean, we were in the mid multi-million dollar range heading towards, we had an opportunity actually to grow the business to a nine-figure business because we had won a contract. So it seemed insane to the people around us. But that just goes to show you, Bob, there was no amount of money that could overcome the sadness that I felt, that could take away the hole that I felt in my life. And I was happy to walk away. It looked crazy. It felt crazy. I was talking to myself. I was telling myself, you're insane. My family didn't know what to think. People thought maybe we lost the business. We had to resist the ego temptation of trying to explain ourselves. There was just too much explaining to do. So we had to, thank God we had each other, but we had to really weather the storm of judgment and to go with our gut. And I'm really happy we did.
Saying about this quote I read the other day, which was, if you realized how quickly the dead are forgotten, you would never want to worry about what other people think. I mean, people do make comments and things, but how much are they really thinking about you? And how much do they really give a shit? Most of the time, people are thinking about themselves. That's what they're doing.
That's exactly right. I have a childhood friend that I'm still close with, and she was reading the book. So we don't know that much about each other's lives. We stay in touch more like every quarter or birthdays and holidays. Yeah. And she sent me a text last night and she said, I'm sure people are gossiping about you pretty good right now. And I said, you know what, I've had about 5 years of that, so I'm a pro at that, so it doesn't bother me anymore. And it's been part of my growth process of releasing the external and releasing what other people might think of me. And it's just made me such a happier person.
When you think about the people that are, we can use the word gossiping or talking about you, whatever, those are spectators. Those aren't participants. So who really, does it matter? What if, so-and-so thinks poorly of me, or, well, does that really matter? I don't think it does, but it feels like, ouch, when it's happening.
That's right.
I don't think anybody's immune to that. Very few people are immune to it, but it's sort of how much percentage of the way you feel, you're going to let that affect. Look at it if it's just a low percentage. And also the other thing I always say is, how's that working for me? Whatever I'm doing, or, is like, I'm on the side of what works really. And so if something doesn't work, it doesn't matter.
It's been a process of, as well, allowing things to go through me and not to stick in me. So when I hear comments and things happen, I just let it flow through me. Yes, it still matters, but it only matters for a second. And I just allow it to go on, because frankly, we're all going through the same life, pretty much with the same challenges, with the same concerns. We're all dealing with the same fears, and so it's just a matter of putting things in perspective, of remembering that, as you said, the spectators and the other people around me are dealing with their own issues, with their own challenges, the things that they are working to release. And instead of talking about each other, I hope one day we can begin to help each other. As Ram Dass says, we're all just walking each other home. So if we can begin to embrace that. And the book was, not the easiest thing for us to write. It's very transparent, but it was very freeing to be able to put that out there and say, this is who I am, because it forced me to live true to myself.
Now, are you and your husband still working together, or you just did the book and now you're doing different things? How did that sort of morph into what's going on now?
So we're doing different things. We do some things together. So we are doing some workshops and retreats through Inbound Leadership, which is my company. He participates, but he is off doing his dream, which is he's an executive in healthcare. And that's his love, that's his passion.
Okay. Well, so both of you are of interest to me. Obviously, those are two things that I like. Working with anytime I can talk to somebody and learn something, or hopefully even impart some kind of experience. That's a great feeling. And of course, healthcare is kind of the whole thrust of what I'm doing. So I get it. It's a pretty fascinating thing. This idea of getting back to the things that you're born with, and one is a body, and how do you take care of it? And there was a lot of years I didn't take care of myself at all. I mean, the exact opposite. And then I don't know what happened. I mean, I do know what happened, but there was a change, and I went, oh, well, that's this. If I can take care of my physicality, that helps everything else. It's all connected, and I know that your approach is very holistic, also in what you do.
Absolutely. So when I work with, because I do work with CEOs and leaders, if they're not willing to do the health part, I tell them it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I'm not for them, because you have to be willing, as you said, to take care of the physical body. You can be the most intelligent, strategic person in the world. If you are physically compromised, it just isn't going to work. And frankly, you're probably doing things, I won't say for the wrong reasons, but not for the whole reason.
I think there's probably some belief system that there was a word in there that in your bio about what you do. The word is vulnerability, and that to me seems to be almost the opposite of what a CEO does, or how they view what they need to do. If I'm vulnerable, I'm going to be destroyed. It's a ruthless, particularly in a business world, it's a ruthless business. And if I'm too vulnerable, then I'm, basically opening myself to be screwed over or taken advantage of or not respected.
It's funny how vulnerability gets equated with weakness. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
But it's quite the opposite. It takes courage to be vulnerable. And
yeah.
But for some reason, we hear vulnerable and we think, oh, okay, that's a weakness. I'm going to open myself up. But when we have the courage to be vulnerable, we learn, we listen, we share, and we grow.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you don't have a boundary and a set of ways of doing things, but boy, that word it does equate with weakness for a lot of people. But I'm sure you've had this, and because I know I have, where I've been vulnerable with the wrong person.
Absolutely.
And they really try to take advantage of that situation, but they really can't do much. They really can't.
Only if you let them.
If you let them, right. But there's always like, stop. That's not what I'm doing here.
That's right. And it's when we second guess ourselves, I think, after we have been vulnerable and we revert back to our fear-based thinking, that we might empower the person who might not have the best of intentions. But if we are grounded and rooted in what we know, and we are transparent and to be honest and to connect, then there's not much they can do.
What does inbound leadership do? Let's say I'm a CEO of Amalgamated Company Incorporated, and I call you and you come over to the company. And what do you do with me? What do you tell me? What do you show me? How does that work? I have 100 employees. I have a really nice building, and I make stuff for people.
So my job has nothing to do with what your company does or what your company earns. My job is about making you the best person and CEO you can be so that you can have a level of contentment in what you have chosen to do and what you have chosen to be, who you've chosen to be. So inbound leadership is about making you go inward to rediscover why you're doing what you're doing and what it is you're hoping to achieve, and to reemerge with more authenticity, more clarity, being more grounded, more connected to that purpose, so that you can then take your strategy, your tactics, your tasks, and merge them for better results.
I want to call it business therapy.
That's a good term. That's a good term.
Well, I'm just thinking the people that would come to you would be not about making money. They'd be there. It's more like I don't feel quite right, and
That's right.
And they're obviously somewhat open minded in the first place to even give you a call.
That's right. That's right. I'm about personal transformation, and personal growth, and that automatically spurs the organizational growth. Once the CEO becomes self-aware and transparent and vulnerable, then the engagement with and the culture within his organization grows. It expands. And so I'm not there working with the CEO's people. I'm not there trying to teach them how to make $30 million a year. I wish that someone had done that for me. And that is how I really came into this mindset of helping CEOs become more comfortable with who they are, why they are, get more grounded with what they do each day. So my thing is, are you meditating? Are you journaling? Are you clear about why you want to pursue this $50 million contract? What's the purpose in it? How does that align with the other things that you want in your life? How does that align with who you are choosing to be each day when you show up? How might that compromise who you are? So that's my role.
I think there's a lot of people that could use that don't even realize that's available, or that it's a thing, that it's possible. So keep up the good work.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think it's important. Yeah. Wow. What a great talk. I really enjoyed speaking with you today. And I hope folks, if somebody wants to get a hold of you or find out more other than the book, is there a website? How do people find you?
Please visit inboundleadership.com. Inbound as in inbound the ball, leadership.com.
Okay. And more will be revealed once you get there, folks.
I appreciate it, Bob. This has been a joy.
Same here. You have a beautiful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. There's also a YouTube channel where you can listen. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Malitta Seamon for being on the show, and have a fantastic day. Thank you.